Well, this is what I want to do tonight. Are you ready? Something a little different.
Okay.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
Change.
No We're not going to stay in Leviticus the third week. Okay? You get to look more at that if you want. You get to look at all the laws all by yourself.
All 633?
Yes.
Okay.
You get to read all those laws, and you can determine if you want, what applied to us, and what applied only to them, what applies to both of us. But I want to keep moving through. Again, we're in the Exodus era, and tonight we're going to look at the third, we might say, the third of four major events in the Exodus era. When we say the Exodus era, again, it's everything that had to do with them leaving, exiting, before they finally landed home. Because they're still exiting. And you're going to catch that tonight. The exit did not end once they left Egypt and the little boundary, the dark black line. Right? They're still exiting. You are still on the exit until you are on the enter. And they're not going to enter anything yet. And you're going to find out why and how long they're going to have to wait to enter something. So they're still in the Exodus era. And sometimes that's us.
Explain.
There are things that you think you've left, and I'm done with that. But are you? Until you finally enter the next thing. The place you're supposed to be. The situation you should be in. So, again, the four major events. The first one is the deliverance. And that's, we saw that in Exodus 1 through 18. Those first 18 chapters. That's when we see the birth of Moses. And him being adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. And then all of a sudden and within the second chapter, he's a young man. He sees, a taskmaster beating on a Jew. He kills the Egyptian taskmaster, flees, runs off to run from Pharaoh because Pharaoh now wants to kill him. And that's where he meets Jethro, a new father-in-law, because he gets married to one of his daughters. And he lives there until he's 80 years old. That's when God talks to him to the burning bush. And says, hey, I'm going to send you back to Pharaoh. And then we have all the plagues and everything going on right there. At the 18th chapter, you got the Passover. They finally leave. And they go to the second major event, which is what we call the law. That's where they then arrive at Mount Sinai. The pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. They end up then, they go through the Red Sea. There they are at Mount Sinai. God delivers the law, etches them out. You saw how that goes. That's Exodus 19 through what we might call Numbers 12, because you'll see there's more stuff coming. Okay, but Kadesh Barnea is the third one. That's Numbers 13 to 20. You'll see what happens, because when I say the law is Exodus 19 to Numbers 12, there are still laws that are going to be given. We're going to read them. Leviticus is about law, right? It's the law of the priests. So God gives common law. He gives civil law. He gives spiritual law. He's going to give some more laws. And it's going to run into Numbers. And then we're going to see something we call Kadesh Barnea. It's a location. And something pivotal happens at the location that begins a longer sojourn in the desert. And then there's the 40 years wandering, the longer sojourn in the desert. And the 40 years of wandering is also bleeds into Numbers, chapter 20, all the way through Deuteronomy. And it's at the end of Deuteronomy is where we see they're now they're going to enter the promised land, but you don't see it until Joshua, the very next book, right? And that's the 4 years going to be over. So how's that for a quick little recap and Numbers? So if you got your Bible, you could turn there And here's some Numbers trivia for you. It is what we call the largest book of the Pentateuch. The first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. It's the largest of those first 5 books. It's also the 5th largest book in the Old Testament. It's a biggie. The title Numbers really is there because it represents the censuses, the numbers of certain things, the numbers of Jews in each tribe, the numbers of the fighting force in each tribe. And that number, that title of Numbers comes from what we call the Greek Old Testament. We talked about this a long time ago at the beginning of this new loop through the entire Bible. We were talking about exegesis, eisegesis. We talked about theology, how the Bible was created and put together. And one of the things we talked about were the various versions of ancient texts and manuscripts that scholars used to translate the Bible. We talked about earlier translations and what translations were made from other translations, English translations and what they're made from. One of the most popular is called the Septuagint. Septuagint is a Latin word. The Septuagint isn't Latin, it's Greek. It was a Greek translation of the Old Testament Hebrew Scriptures that King Ptolemy ordered in about 250 BC. And, but the Latin word, Septuagint, is the word for 70, which represents the 70 scholars, Jewish scholars, that came together to make the translation. But then there's a little later belief that actually it was 72. Now the name didn't get changed to 72. It stayed the name 70. But there's a more widely accepted belief that 72 Jewish scholars, 6 from each of the 12 tribes.
I thought 10 of those tribes were gone at that time.
Right, and which something we talked about too. But this is the belief.
Oh, okay.
Because there's nowhere where you get the name of the 72 and hear exactly who they are. So the idea is that widely accepted by rabbis is that 6 Jewish scholars from each of the 12 tribes came together and did it. So enough on that maybe. So the actual in the Hebrew Bible, the actual name of Numbers is Bimidbar. Bimid, put it on the D, after the D. Bimidbar, which means in the wilderness. Because if you look at Numbers chapter 1, verse 1, it says, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness. Okay, now I remind you that the Jewish Old Testament, the names that are given to the books usually come from the first sentence or the first word of the book itself. Okay, like Genesis, Bereshit, in the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So we say Genesis because a Genesis is a beginning of things, but the actual Hebrew word is Bereshit, in the beginning. Shemot, Exodus, names, because the book starts out, these are the names. The sons of Leviticus, Vayikra, and he called. From the opening words, and he called to Moses. So, chapter 1, verse 1. Somebody read that. Okay, so, think about it. Look at verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting. Where we know what the tent of meeting is, that's the tabernacle that they built, that tent. In the 2nd year, after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, all right, so that's how we know, this, what we're about to read, what's in, right here at the beginning, starts 2 years after they left Egypt. So Just gives you a little timeline. They've been 2 years already. 2 years? How long is 2 years?
Depends on how old you are.
Depends how old. I mean, there's a lot that happens in 2 years. Imagine, yeah, I mean, 24 months. I want you to think of 2 years, just, you're living in the desert. You don't have running water, you don't have a house, you've got these tents, you're scraping by, you're surviving, it's just out in the desert. And somebody tells me that will feel like 10 years. Yeah, for us, yeah, for them it might have felt like 100 years. Oh, all right. And so look what happens here. God tells Moses, verse 2, take a census of the whole congregation of the Israelites in their clans by ancestral houses according to the family, to the number of names, every male individually from 20 years old and upward, everyone in Israel able to go to war. Able to go to war. So I don't want you to count, I want you to count the men who are able to go to war. So there's a certain age, a certain physicality, they're just, we're looking for ability. So that's what we started, and I just want you to scan.
Going back to that 2 years, I guess if you compared 2 years of getting up every morning and getting into a big tub and stomping straw in the mud to make bricks. And then getting whipped on your back if you aren't stomping hard enough. Compared to getting up in the morning and walking out and picking up a quail and a piece of bread.
Yeah.
And going back and cooking it and eating fresh meat every day.
Yeah. You hope it's an improvement, Tom. Yeah, you hope it's an improvement. And the quail are going to show up in numbers, by the way. When all of a sudden a whole bunch of quail come through, that's so funny, isn't it? But God by name, he says, hey, here's the guys, Moses. And I love this. This should also encourage you about something. God knows you. He knows what you can do. He knows what you are made for. Don't doubt that. Here's an example. Moses, from the tribe of Reuben, I want you to pick this guy. His name is Elizur, son of Shedur. In case there's a couple, few, maybe 20 Elizurs in this massive tribe. This is the one who's the son. His dad's name is Shedur. Okay, that's the guy. From the tribe of Simeon, and just look. God knows who has certain gifts, who should be on the bus, and in what seat. And God's doing that here. It's pretty cool. All right? It continues. Go down to verse 20. The descendants of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, their lineage in their clans, by their ancestral houses, according to the number of names, individually, every male from 20 years old and upward, everyone able to go to war. Those enrolled of the tribe of Reuben were 46,500. That's how many men from that tribe can go to war.
And that's 20 years? Well,
And notice, he says, nobody under 20.
it even gets counted.
Huh?
They don't get counted.
Right.
Nobody under 20 gets counted.
Nobody under 20. All the boys, nope. Nobody was counted.
And females still?
These are females, no daughters, no nothing. No wives, no daughters, no nothing. This is, we're looking at the fighting force here. And it continues.
20 to 40.
20 and up.
Yeah, yeah, up 20, yeah, and
Able
upward,
to fight.
able to go to war.
Right.
So that's a qualifier.
It depends.
So, it's
If you had to wear the tents, you couldn't go.
yeah. I mean, they know within reason they're going to say, we're not going to put you out there, not fair to you, and they'll kill you the moment you're out there. And just go ahead and scan that. But like I said in that first paragraph, I want you to think that here at the beginning of the nation, God says, time to make an army. Don't say that God is not for self-defense. Do not say God is not the God of the Second Amendment. Founding Fathers knew it, because that's the reality of the human life. That's life on earth. If you got a nation, you better be able to defend it. Otherwise, you ain't gonna have a nation. This nation would never have gotten anywhere because if they didn't mobilize, train, identify who is part of our military. It's what you do. Anybody with a brain knows that. In any country throughout human history, I mean, it's the Bushmen, you know, in Papua New Guinea. They know who is ready to fight in case a neighboring tribe comes to mess things up. It's just how it is. I like that about God. Okay? God He's practical. And He's real. By way of just introduction still, I want to say that the book of Numbers can be summarized by 2 words. Right? Marching and murmuring. Marching, say wandering, but I mean they're literally like on the move. And it's very interesting how they stay on the move. And they're always, I hate it here, I hate it, this stinks. They've already been murmuring. They're going to keep murmuring. Because the longer you're in the wilderness, the more you murmur. Unless you learn to change your attitude, and that your murmuring only keeps you in the wilderness longer.
That's part of the military, isn't
Does that sound like the military? If you're in boot camp, why did I sign up? I thought this was great. I thought I was going to visit places all over the world. Okay. And the book tells the history of God's people from the time of what we call this first census here to the final encampment before they enter the promised land. I think I already mentioned it. For the most part, during the period Israel's on the march from Mount Sinai to the plains of Moab, which is just across the Jordan River from Jericho, which is why, if you're familiar with the book of Joshua, they're on one side of the Jordan River, and God has a conversation in this amazing form. This person shows up, talks to Joshua, says, "Hey, buddy, here's what we're going to do." You know, and we believe it's Jesus in the Old Testament. Joshua gets the plans. He gets the most strange military strategy, which is the whole marching around the walls of Jericho, and you know the rest of the story. That is how they begin to enter the promised land. So, even though the Lord is leading them the whole time, all during that march, God's people are complaining about their circumstances. Think about that for a moment. Do you complain about your circumstances? Sometimes. And it's hard not to.
Human nature.
It's human nature. But you got to keep in mind, and sometimes you got to make yourself believe it, even if you don't. You just really can't believe it anymore. But you make yourself believe it anyway. God is in the midst of this. He's been leading me. I got to believe that He's still part of this, because what grounds you in that is the understanding of His love. Do you have any idea how much God loves you? I mean, really, do you have any idea how much God really loves you? Because if you really understood how much He loves you, I just don't think you know and murmur as much as we do. Because I think our murmuring, our grumbling, we can't see why we're in the circumstance, and we don't want to see why. We just are aware of why we don't like it, instead of understanding that actually there is a God who loves us to death. He's aware of it. He's seeing it. He might be refining something in us. He might be using us in this place to prepare us for something. And if we understand that we have a loving, loving God, and it's out of His love that He's allowed us to be where we are, even if where we are is because of what we did, good or bad.
At the very least, you can look at the cross and see the suffering and bleeding for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. Yeah. And don't ever forget the cross. God's bleeding. He was bleeding over you, right? So keep that in mind. They weren't doing that, and we just got to think about our own circumstances and apply God's word right there to us. And so let me say that, given that, there's some various key thoughts, key things that are happening in the book, and again, a little more introduction. One of the key thoughts, or maybe we might say the key thought numbers, is discipline. Boot camp. It's not about you. This is about forgetting about yourself, your happiness. Y'all gotta look out for each other. Don't leave your brother behind on the battlefield. I mean, right? Boot camp breaks you down, breaks the individual down, so you stop existing for yourself and you begin to exist for everybody else. You're going to watch the boot camp of God on a nation. Not a battalion, a nation. We need the boot camp, right? And true freedom, it requires discipline, as well as law. Right? The law came in Exodus and Leviticus primarily. A little bit's going to come into Numbers. But Numbers is about discipline. Because if you don't have discipline, either self-discipline or the discipline of God, I ain't going to follow the law well. Don't you think? So in Genesis, let's say this. If we were to look at, so far, the first 4 books that we've been studying in the beginning of the Bible, Genesis is the formation of the nation of Israel. And that Sunday morning, we went through that, took a long time to go through it. And watching the families and the building and the tribes and Joseph and Egypt and that. It's the formation of the nation. In Exodus, we might say that's the salvation of the nation. Right? We're going to deliver you from forever, being just a slave. So if they never came out of Egypt, would we even know about the Jews? Yeah, they'd be Egyptians. I mean, would they have been worked to death? Who knows? Leviticus, we might say that's the sanctification of the nation. We're going to set you up, clean you up. Remember, be holy like I am holy. That's the theme of Leviticus. We're gonna establish to sanctify you means you need some religion. Y'all got to get some religion. And so God's going to give them religion and a religious system. And don't misunderstand, it's relationship. You noticed it. It's all about relationship. This is how you're going to come into relationship with me and into my presence. This is how it has to be done. The Numbers would be the education of the nation. You got to learn certain things now. As we go through Numbers, we'll find out what it is. And of course, we're going to only go through so much tonight. And then 3 weeks from now, come back and we'll continue. The key passage, and we'll see if we get to it tonight, is chapter 14, verses 29 to 30. Those 2 verses, that's where God goes, there's some things you didn't learn, right? And now you get to learn them. And you're going to go to the school of hard knocks. Here's the education. Back into the wilderness you go, and you're going to stay here. You didn't like it for 2 years? I got news for you. You get 40 years now. 40 years. 1 year to represent every day that the 12 spies went in and spied. You'll see. We'll get to that. I don't want to jump in. Wow. God sentences an entire generation to wander in the wilderness for 40 years because of their lack of faith. And, don't think that God, how many of us are kind of wondering why hasn't God sentenced America to some sort of a wandering? Maybe we're already there and we don't really realize we've already kind of reaped the Romans 1 and God says, if you don't believe I exist, because that's what happens in Romans 1, people just as a whole stop believing in God. Because they saw the creation, this is Romans 1, but they still didn't believe in the Creator, and they did not honor Him as the Creator. Evolution, everything else. But this is what we've been telling our nation. And then all of a sudden, as Romans 1 continues, the society falls apart. The definition of family falls apart. Everything falls apart. And God allows it. He goes, that's the punishment. Where's America today?
close.
I mean, we're in it.
We're falling apart.
We're experiencing that, all right? So the ultimate purpose and lesson in Numbers, we might say, is that perseverance is going to be essential. That's one of the things they're going to learn. You got to learn to persevere. You got to learn to take your lumps. You got to learn to live with the discipline of God. You've got to learn to live with the fallout of decisions you make. And you got to persevere in many things. You got to persevere in your belief that actually I'm the God of love and I do things out of love. You got to persevere in believing that I have not left you. I'm walking with you. I'm also in the wilderness. I want you to think when somebody goes to prison, you know how this goes. Who else is in prison besides the incarcerated person? Their family. Right? You talk to the members of somebody in jail, and they'll tell you they feel like they're in jail every day because they're constantly worried. I mean, wouldn't you be? Or maybe you've had that experience. Your heart is going out, aching for the person, knowing that they're in solitude or they're isolated, they're behind bars. That kills you to know that's the existence while you're out free having your hamburger or whatever. Do you really have peace to enjoy your life as long as you know that your loved one's in prison? God, when he sentenced them to the wilderness, he's sentencing himself to the wilderness. This is the guy that walks with us. I mean, God still has to be their God in the wilderness. I'd rather be your God in the promised land. And everything would be a lot smoother with all of us, and we'd get things accomplished, and we'd get what we want if you'd obey me. But if you don't, this is where you're going to go, but I'm also going to be there with you.
If he's truly the Father, he worries about us.
Thank you, Gary. All right? If he's truly the Father, he worries about us. Aren't you glad? Thank him that he worries about you. You got a God that worries about you. So, we might say the spoiler is, only 2 adults of the entire nation that left Egypt. Only 2! What did you think of this? Of the millions of Hebrews that left Egypt, only 2, 40 years from now, from chapter 1, are going to enter the promised land. The rest are going to die off. Now, that's of the original group that left Egypt. Now, the group that has left Egypt, this nation, is reproducing. They're building families. They're having kids.
Out in the desert,
Out in the desert.
on the sand.
On the sand. They're making it work.
In their tents.
In their tents. You're fine. Just specify.
On the move all the time.
On the move. But the original folks that left, not one of them, 2 of them, all but 2, die off and cannot enter the promised land. We might say that those who make a good start aren't crowned. It's those who finish the course that are crowned, right? We know how that goes. And it's from this book of Paul. He draws that lesson that Christians have to avoid presumption. Don't be presumptuous when it comes to God. That's 1 Corinthians 10. We'll look at that in a few weeks from now. And then there's Kadesh Barnea. Let's wait on that. Okay, so let's look at Numbers. Here we go. Chapter 1. Scan it. You see the tribes at 20. It's here's the fighting force from Reuben, 22. From Simeon, starting at 24. From Gad, 26. Judah, 28. Issachar, 30. Zebulun, 32. Joseph, 34. Manasseh, this is one of his sons, 36. Benjamin, and I should say Manasseh and Ephraim. 36 descendants of Benjamin. 38 of Dan. 40 descendants of Asher. 42 descendants of Naphtali. And then it. What is this? Where I want to send you to. Let's say God sets up how you're going to march. You're going to be flanked by certain folks. Let's say who's going to be the walk point as you're going. Time to watch your back. Time to put a guard in front and a rear guard. Here's what's going to happen. Kind of cool. On the west side shall be the regimental encampment of Ephraim on 18, etc., etc. So, when you pitch your tents, this is how you do it. You're going to circle wagons. It's great. Okay, God's a strategist. A little bit of the lineage of the sons of Aaron. Here's, his kids. Here's some more duties of the Levites, chapter 3. Just look at them. Here's some of the stuff you got to do. There's a census of the Levites. Here's how many you. Now, these folks, are they in war?
No.
Are they in war?
They're not counted to be, yeah.
You stated that everyone died before the two entered the promised land.
Yes, but not their offspring. So they've replaced themselves. But the original group that came out of Exodus, only 2 of the original group of the, we believe, millions, are alive to.
Yeah, you stated a large number of just fighting age men.
Yeah, this is just fighting.
And there were more than that, and none of them made it. Was that due to the hardships of the travel, or did people only live that long?
It's a combination of various things. And there's going to be some things that will kill them. And things. We'll talk about it when we get there. There's
disobedience that
there's,
their own foolishness.
Yeah, there's going to be some disobedience, and it's quite the story.
Stupid Moses too many times.
Mhm.
Yeah, they said it too many times.
So, where do I want to take you? Oh, how about chapter 6? You know where a Nazarite comes from? Here's where the Nazarite comes from. Jesus was considered a Nazarite of sorts because of the vows that he had made, but the most famous Nazarite in the Bible is Samson. But look at chapter 6. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when either men or women make a special vow, the vow of a Nazarite, to separate themselves," and a Nazarite means separated or consecrated person, to separate themselves to the Lord, they shall separate themselves from wine and strong drink. They won't drink wine vinegar or any vinegar. They shall not drink any grape juice or eat grapes, fresh or dried. All their days as Nazarites, they'll eat nothing that's produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds of the skin. Read it? They'll never shave their head. Hair's going to be really long. Verse 5, 6. They're never going to go near a corpse. This is the third thing. You can't touch anything dead. Even if their father or mother, brother or sister would die, they may not defile themselves. They can't touch that dead thing. You can't, reach over the casket and as you're crying and, hug your dead parent. Not even that. Now, why? You get to ask God when you get there.
Well, when I was reading this earlier this year, I noticed verse 8, which I don't think I'd ever really noticed verse 8 before. It says, all the days of his separation he shall be holy to the Lord.
Yeah. And they're not Nazarites forever.
Yeah.
They actually later we find out they could actually say, okay, I'm done being a Nazarite.
Yeah. And I had really never noticed that before.
And Samson broke almost all of these laws right off the bat.
You broke them all. He broke them all.
Killed people, doing stuff.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
his haircut.
Yeah, got a haircut. Yeah, that's the thing. So you might say, no alcoholic, nothing, because the Nazarite, let's just say, it doesn't say this, so you got to read into it. You want to always be present-minded. Don't be under the influence, because you never know what you may decide to do or when I might need you. You just, a soldier, at the front lines should never be drunk because all of a sudden the siren goes off. Just always stay sober-minded. Your hair, never cut it. Well, you're looking for physical things where people know that's a Nazarite. Nowadays the priest, the nun, the nuns used to wear the habits. Priests still wear the white collar. I mean, there's an identifying marker. Oh, that's a Nazarite. They've just dedicated themselves in a very special way to God. They don't touch anything dead. Why would touching something dead defile you?
I mean, that was already laid out as ceremonial uncleanness.
So they don't eat meat?
This is a corpse, a person.
Oh, okay.
Well, who knows what that person died of?
Yeah. Is it, you stay away from a disease? Is that why you don't touch something dead? Again, it doesn't tell us, but you can do a study on it, and you'll hear some guesses, and what may be most probable reason. Nonetheless, I like to just say, hey, God said don't do it. Well, don't do it. He's got a reason.
He obviously had some reason for not eating pork either, but I like pork.
I think so. And then it just goes on about an Nazarite, what they can or cannot do. Let me speed you over to... Maybe I'll take you. Let's jump over to 11. Okay. So again, you're seeing in those chapters there are some more laws, there's some rules. It's stuff that it's you can read if you want. It's not the stuff that really necessarily applies to you. It really doesn't. It's about what happens, the offerings that some of the Levites have to make. It's things that have to do with the temple worship and some other deals. But here comes 11. And we'll wrap up here where we can. Verse 1. Somebody read for me first 3 verses.
Now when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, for the Lord heard it, and his anger was aroused. So the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some of the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and when Moses prayed to the Lord, the fire was quenched. So he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord had burned among them.
Okay, that word is like burning. All right, so when the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes, their circumstances, the Lord heard it, and he was not happy about it. Now, again, we've seen some times where God, at the beginning stage of the nation, he's got zero tolerance. And it's because of, again, what he's already been doing. And don't forget, all the stuff that they do and how stupid they are and their weird worship services that they had at Mount Sinai not long before this. And they're still complaining. And they've already complained. We're thirsty out here. God miraculously, that rock splits open, everybody's drinking this incredible fresh water. We're hungry. And all water, literally like there's bread from heaven, right? God does these miraculous little things. And they're ungrateful. They don't like their circumstances. They're complaining. We weren't there. There are no cameras back then, no video cameras to record exactly what it was like. But let's just imagine, it was enough for God to smoke some of them and go, you got bad attitudes, and you're going to be toxic to everybody else. And those were the bad attitudes. And this fire, wherever it is, don't know what it looked like. We weren't there. Don't know how it came. Did it kind of come up out of the ground out of nowhere? Did it fall out of the sky? Was it like a little, I don't know. But literally, God who can make water appear, bread appear, part the Red Sea, can drop a bunch of fire and barbecue some people. And it consumes some of these people in these outlying parts of the camp. And the people cry out to who? Moses. Because they're going, he's the only guy that God listens to and wants to listen to. And so they go to Moses. Moses, talk to God. Stop. We've got people dying. And Moses prays, God stops. What do you learn from that? What do you think that lesson was about?
Intercessory prayer.
Intercessory prayer.
Yeah.
Moses is your leader. Don't complain. No bad attitudes.
He seems to be getting exasperated when they constantly, after so many proofs that he is with them and watching over them, that they constantly keep failing him. And I would hate to think that even the Lord is able to be exasperated, but
Good. Don't think it has anything to do with God. Because some people might look at this and go, you'd be tempted to go, wow, God's kind of harsh. Well, don't forget everything that's gone before this. And we weren't there. And these were a bunch of ungrateful, bitter, complaining people. God drowned their enemies. And they all got up on the other side of that, the Red Sea, and watched. They walked through the sea. The water was like walls, it says, on either side of them. Wide enough for this massive caravan to walk through. Stayed open. As they're walking through it, they all get up. When the last person get out, all the Egyptians come riding in, and then whoosh.
and those are object lessons to believe in him.
Yeah.
But also the deaths and the pestilence and whatever else he's creating when we think he's getting irritated. Those are also object lessons, and they bring everybody back to the path.
They do. This again, it's discipline. Again, you need to watch his throughout Numbers. We've got to do some correction. It's a strong spanking. Nothing like a good swat. Get you back on the path. Okay? That's what appears to happen. And it's about time to end.
They needed the gift of faith.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So,
They need a gift of better memory.
When you read the next paragraph, and Moses, at times he's not any better.
No.
Complaining to God.
no. So, you remember, get what? Look forward. The rabble among them had a strong craving. The Israelites also wept again, the Lord, and said, if only we had meat to eat. We're tired of this bread stuff, right? We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing. It was free because they threw this old rotted fish at us slaves. You know, the dry crumbs and toast in prison and water. At least, oh gee. The cucumbers and the melons, the leeks and the onions and the garlic, and something tells me it's nostalgia. They're looking back at something that's better than it was, and it's not. But now our strength is dried up, and there's nothing at all but this manna to look at. Wait, as Craig was saying earlier. Wait, you used to live with whips on your back. Your day, every day was spent picking up mud, mixing it with straw, packing it into these frames, and then setting them out and making them dry, and they're heavy, and you're stacking stuff, and you're pretty much building the pyramids for the pharaohs, and you're building Egypt, and you're I'm sorry you're having the same thing to eat every day. But listen, it's amazing. You'd think it sets them up. Don't say it sets them up for what's coming, because the spies are about to be released in a couple chapters from now to go look, and when they come back, let's just go there. Stay here. Okay, wait. I gotta go. We gotta do this. They're complaining. Talks about manna again, verse 7. What they used to do, they grind it, they beat it in mortars, they boil it in pots, they make cakes out of it. They did everything they can with it. Do you remember Keith Green? Oh, I grew up spiritually with Keith Green. Loved his stuff, junior high and high school. I always loved his stuff. I was heartbroken when he died. But he does that one song, Want to Go Back to Egypt. Remember that one? So you want to go back to Egypt, right? And it's so funny. And at the end, he's talking about all this stuff with manna. He goes, banana bread. You know,
Yeah.
all these things they made with manna. This is so funny. Huh?
Manna burgers?
Yeah, manna burgers. That's right. That's so funny. So they're sick and tired of it. Verse 10, Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families at the entrance of all their tents. They're all at their front door. We're tired of this. Whatever, Then the Lord became very angry, and Moses was displeased. So Moses said to the Lord, why have you treated your servant so badly? Why have I not found favor in your sight that you laid the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive all these people? Did I give birth to them? And you should say to me, carry them in your bosom and nurse, as a nurse carries a sucking child to the land that you promised on oath to be their ancestors. God, you're the one who's not delivering yet, and so they're sick of this, and I have nothing to give them, and you're looking at me. Okay, sometimes leadership is a heavy weight when the people are complaining, and because God might keep people in a certain place for a certain amount of time, and you don't really have any explanation, but God is just saying, this is where we are right now. This is our season, and I don't have anything else to say. I have nothing else to give you. Verse 13, where am I to get meat to give to all these people? For they come weeping to me and say, give us meat to eat, and wouldn't you? This is anti-vegetarian. See, it's human nature not to be a vegetarian. You see this?
Good point.
Thank you. Okay. So, give us meat to eat. And he says, I'm not able to carry all these people alone. They're too heavy for me. If this is the way you're going to treat me, put me to death at once. If I have found favor in your sight, and do not let me see my misery. If you love me at all, kill me. Isn't this great? He's so human. Moses cracks me up. He's so human. So the Lord says to Moses, 16, gather for me 70 of the elders of Israel. We're going to put them in charge of certain stuff. Have them come talk to me. I'm going to come talk to them. Verse 17. I will take some of the spirit that is on you. I'm going to put it on them, so that they shall bear the burden of the people along with you, so that you don't bear it by yourself. And say to this people, consecrate yourselves, because tomorrow you get steak. Well, not steak, but chicken. But he says, you're going to eat meat tomorrow. Okay. Oh, so you know what's interesting about this? I love it in that, are we still good? Time-wise? Oh, I forgot. Ruthie bought me a clock, so I don't have to keep looking at that. There's my clock. So you got Moses, who finally goes, God! And he wrestles with God, and he intercedes. And God, he doesn't say, you complainer, and fry him. He says, all right, I see the pressure of leadership is a lot on you. Do this. Give me 70 people. 70 is good. I'm going to spread out the responsibility of leadership. You good with that? And then listen. You know, I'm not a diehard. It's not that I don't have compassion. We're going to have a little conversation and then prepare the people. Tell them to get out their steak knives. I'm going to send them some meat tomorrow. Wow. Oh, wait. So sometimes, maybe God lets us be in certain places for a certain amount of time until we finally, remember we talked about this before, you're allowed to get angry. You're allowed to kind of demand things from God. We've seen that. That's in the scriptures. And he demands, God, do something. Give them meat. God likes to have conversation. He likes to be reasoned with. And it's like, this is great. Moses, maybe it's a learning curve for Moses. And he finally realizes, I can't do it. I need you to come up with a miracle still. Yeah, don't ever forget that, buddy. Okay, I think you've learned something here. We're going to share out, spread leadership, and here comes the meat. Oh, really? It was that easy? I'm sure Moses would have thought, why did I have this conversation with God earlier? We've been eating bread for 2 years, and I finally got angry. I finally... I think Moses is learning something too. Maybe something for us to learn too. And
Now you're going to eat meat until you gag.
let's do this. This is so great.
Overdo it. 60 bushels.
This is so good. Oh. Okay. How about 19? Look. Moses says to everybody, you shall not meet for only 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? You want meat? I'm going to give you meat. So much meat, you're going to get sick of the meat. It's going to be coming out of your nostrils. He's funny. That's what he says. That's so funny. And you're going to say, why did we ever leave Egypt? You're going to complain again. Some people find something to complain about no matter what you do. You give somebody prime rib every day for 30 days and they're going to complain about it.
But I had to pluck feathers off a quail and reach in and take every day.
Every day.
Get that blood and the feathers stuck together. It's hard to get off without the water. Oh, I complain.
You complain. I complain. So the Lord says to Moses, 23, is the Lord's power limited? Don't ever forget that verse. Underline it. Now you shall see whether my word will come true or not. So Moses went and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered 70 elders of the people, placed them all around the tent. The Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took some of the spirit that was on Moses and put it on the 70 elders. And when the spirit rested upon them, they prophesied. That's a great God speaking through them. But they did not do so again. They had that one experience, kind of like Acts 2. There's that initial day of Pentecost, everybody speaking foreign languages, and then there wasn't another day like that where everybody didn't know what it was.
Was that so that the rest of the people would know that they were who he anointed them to be?
Yeah, good. Yeah, this is a little affirmation that these are my people, and I've taken my spirits on them, and I've chosen them to lead. I love 29, but Moses said, oh, this is so good. Josh and Moses are having a conversation, and I just love this. Would that all the Lord's people be prophets, and that the Lord would put his spirit on them. I just love it. I wish God would speak to everybody, not just to me, to talk to everybody. I wish just God spoke to everybody. And don't forget, I underline that because the fulfillment of that is Acts chapter 2:17. Where all of a sudden it's the fulfillment of Joel 2, where, hey, God's spirit's going to be on everybody. God wants to talk to everybody. And God does speak to all of you. Does God speak to you? Yes, he does. Okay? And then, here we go, we'll end here. Verse 31. Then a wind went out from the Lord, and it brought quails from the sea, and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and a day's journey on the other side. Wait. What? All around the camp, about 2 cubits deep on the ground. The cubit is elbow to pinky. 2 cubits deep. You know what it's like when it snows a lot? How about snows a lot of quails?
That's a lot of chicken.
So the people worked all that day and night, and all the next day gathering the quails. The least anyone gathered was 10 homers. That's a big 60 bushels. And they spread them out for themselves and all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. So that the place was called Kibrat Hata'avah, because they were buried, because there they buried the people who had the craving. Okay, let's just.
Too much.
So they died?
Yeah.
Did they get what's the Pentateuch? I mean, did they get that? The disease you get from birds?
Gluttony.
I mean, is it gluttony?
Oh.
What do you think it is?
Mine says grapes and
What are you hearing? Yeah, what are you hearing?
I think they ate themselves to death.
Did they eat themselves to death?
Mine says that buried the people that had been greedy.
Buried the people who were greedy.
Greedy.
We had some kittens that ate themselves to
Well,
death.
it's all white meat. It's very dry. You choke on it. For a dark meat lover like me, there's not much on the plate.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
We started out tonight complaining about the weather in South Dakota.
Right, that's funny. Okay, so
Be quiet.
yeah, we
So,
complain about the weather.
Here comes the snow. We're not complaining anymore.
So
How could you complain about the weather here when there's Nebraska?
yeah.
Exactly.
So let me say this, that in all, And could we spend, on Sunday mornings, I like to go verse by verse, spend more time, go into detail. Let's go a little faster if we can on Wednesday nights. And keep the overview thing. And I just want you to consider that as you're reading this, again, it's like excerpts from a journal. It's not a daily journal. Even the excerpts aren't with all the detail that could be there. So some things you kind of go, you got a little question mark, and you want to know why exactly, and who, and how many, what exactly, and use your imagination. What did it look like, and why would God respond this way? And but I believe, and I know you would agree, there's enough detail so that you're not totally clueless as to what God is dealing with. And if you really think about it, why God has to react the way he does. And there's a lot of miraculous to it, and it's stuff like this. All of a sudden, the amount of quail that shows up out of nowhere, it's just bizarre. I mean, it's mind-blowing bizarre.
But he says they'd have meat to eat, and then he buries them and foot of quail.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Well, here's a ton of meat. And they get to go out and they collect it, and they lay it all out, tons of it. Wow, and they eat it. And we don't really know why did certain people die of it. The greedy?
The primary
God
murmurers.
God sent a plague. What was the plague?
Bird flu.
Yeah, the bird flu.
Well, but that was what he was talking about, was basically greed, or in this case, referring to the quail, gluttony.
Yeah, gluttony. And it could be gluttony. And that's where, listen, if you have any commentaries, if you're commentaries, your Bibles might have commentaries, you'll have different scholars' thoughts. They'll take some historical, background, add that to it, and give you, as best as we understand, this is probably what happened, and this is probably why. And that's okay, and that's where we are tonight. Again, as we look through it, we go, and I think we're doing a good job at saying, this is probably what was going on and why. Because we're not given very specific detail. But what we do understand, let's say, if there was what can't be missed is, what we saw tonight was this. People were complaining. After all that we've already seen, we just read about it. Don't forget, we've only read about it. And in our imaginations experienced it. There was actually human beings that experienced that. They actually saw the plagues in Egypt. They saw the Egyptians stuff in their pockets. They saw that their homes, nobody died in their homes when that plague of death came. They saw the drowning of their enemies. They saw this tornado of fire lead them at nighttime. A tornado of a cloud leading them during the day. They saw what was happening up at Mount Sinai, the lightning, the thunder, and they're still just dumb as a bag of hammers. And complaining and rebelling and you know the story. And it goes on and on. And it's as if, again, all we have are parts of a journal. We weren't there. But if you were Moses and you were there, you know what they're doing every single day. We just fast forwarded 2 years by opening Numbers 1. What happened in those 2 years? We don't know. But that's why we have to say, God is fair, God is just, and if God goes, I'm dropping some fire on these folks, it's because he was walking through them those 2 years, and he just goes, I'm telling you, this is the correction they need. And so that's what we need to understand, is we're reading the Bible. We weren't there. We just read it in our imaginations. We can almost fool ourselves, well, I can understand, why God, can you?
Well, in the arguments, against things like this, assume that our morality is higher than that of God's. And like you said, the missing pieces that we don't have.
Yeah, good point. So there's a lot we missed because we weren't there. We missed the show. But again, that's why we got to. When we read the Bible, I just want to say you got to think. think. Don't just read it and think, oh, I got it, or I understand it. You gotta really push past it, like what we're doing here right now. If you were Moses, and you lived every hour, every night you went to bed in the tent, every morning, oh, we're in the desert, for 2 years with all the people, the complaining, you'd be pulling out your hair. I mean, who knows what you'd be feeling. God has watched it for 2 years. Trust him. He knows, does he not, exactly how much pressure to put on who and when and how. He knows exactly what he's going to do to get the reaction he wants. And then ironically, you want meat? I'll answer that prayer. Here comes some meat. But he's going to give it in such a way that it's going to check your attitude. Are you going to be grateful? Or are you going to be like this, what? Is it the glutton or whatever? I mean, don't totally know. But
They all seem to be leading to one thing though, everything, even the weird things. They all, at those times, they all had weakened faith.
mm-hmm.
And whatever, all of these things that he does, even though there's different outcomes of it, it all speaks to a reaffirmation of lost faith at that point.
Sure.
Like the one distinct difference between the Old Testament and the New and living today is that God, in all this that we're studying and we're reading, God is always dealing with a nation of people. Every time he gives a direction, it's to direct this whole nation of millions of
Yeah.
people.
How would you like that responsibility?
But today, God deals with us on a one-on-one individual. God can give us direction and stop us from doing things or help us, whatever.
Oh, then everybody
so
would be
there's
prosperous.
lessons to be learned. What God did to a nation,
Good.
He do it to us today.
So good. Thank you, Craig. Yeah. Now think about that. If you were there, if I could do anything, challenge a church to do anything, use your imagination. And it's not that you're adding anything to the Bible. You put yourself, really think deep, go. What would it have been like to wake up every morning and what was the sound? What was the ambient noise? Remember, they got livestock with them. What's it like to live among millions of tents, as far as you can see? You know what a crowded campground is? As far as the eye can see. You cannot count. To the horizon are tents. And the noise, and the people, and the children running around. And what do? Nobody's got a job. Nobody's got cars to get to the job. What do you do during the day? What in the world? Make babies. What in the world are you doing? I would hate to be in that situation, and I might go, it was better in Egypt. I had a job. I had a routine. But again, this is boot camp. This is God's boot camp. I'm going to deliver you from actually what you forgot how bad it was. I deliver you. You're welcome. And
You did forget.
and now I'm going to work on your attitude and your faith and build you into something that you've never been, you're never able to. And so you know how it goes. I don't want to be redundant, but use your imagination. And you think, if you've got millions of people with bad attitudes, it would be hell on earth. And it's in the stinking desert.
Stinking.
What are we experiencing now?
Yeah, and
But this is all within that 40 years, right?
this is right at the beginning. They haven't even started the 40 years yet.
That's all the first 2 years.
This
At
at the 2-year mark, this is what we just read tonight.
They
Is
had
what
a chance
happened.
to be done with all this at 2 years.
Don't forget, they should have gone into the promised land
2 years and 2
earlier.
months.
Yeah,
But they whipped out because they
Yeah.
get whipped in the
and
eye.
this is
Because they didn't
this is gonna be
believe God.
terrible.
Even all of them walking, the way they could travel then, what, it would take 2 weeks
Oh,
to go from the border they left.
and listen, don't forget.
Straight
Yeah.
shot, right up.
Yeah.
they call that along the coast there, that was the road they were supposed to take. They'd been there.
Yeah. And don't forget, there weren't TVs. Every tent didn't have a TV. So you didn't turn on, Moses, MSNBC or whatever. And everybody, we're all getting up and packing tomorrow and leaving. I mean, how did word get through that many people? I mean, how many people are going, what do we do? Has anybody heard anything from Moses? Who's like 3 miles up there somewhere?
That's probably why God organized where they lived and the groups they lived in so that facilitate communication.
They got to get organized. Oh, it's amazing.
Did they realize they were being disciplined?
Did they realize they were being disciplined? Don't know.
If they did, it
Maybe some did. I think most didn't. But maybe they'll catch on. But we'll let you go tonight because I love this. I'm sorry, it's already 8:20. But to be continued. So again, nothing next Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, watch the Richard Wurmbrand story, Torture for